In November 1939, the Soviet Union invaded Finland, expecting a quick and easy victory. The Soviets had a massive army, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, thousands of tanks, overwhelming numbers on paper. Finland had roughly one-third the manpower, a fraction of the tanks, and almost no modern anti-tank weapons. Most military analysts at the time expected Finland to fall within weeks. What followed instead became known as the Winter War, one of the most lopsided, brutal conflicts in modern military history, fought largely in forests, in temperatures that regularly dropped below -40. Finnish soldiers, many of them hunters and farmers with intimate knowledge of their own terrain, used the brutal winter itself as a weapon. They moved on skis through deep snow the Soviet army struggled to cross. They wore white camouflage that made them nearly invisible against the snow. And they fought a war of ambush and endurance against an enemy that outnumbered them dramatically. Among those farmers turned soldiers was a quiet, unremarkable man named Simo Häyhä. Before the war, Häyhä was nothing extraordinary. A farmer and hunter from a small village near the Soviet border, known locally for his skill with a rifle, but otherwise unremarkable. Quiet, humble, physically unimposing, at just over 5 feet tall. When the war began, he joined a Finnish unit near the Kolea River, an area that would see some of the war's most brutal fighting. Using a standard Finnish rifle without a telescopic scope, Häyhä began systematically eliminating Soviet soldiers from concealed positions in the snow. He deliberately avoided a scope for a specific tactical reason. Scopes required raising your head higher above the rifle, creating a reflective glint that could give away your position, and required exposing more of your body when aiming. Häyhä trained himself to be devastatingly accurate using only iron sights, keeping his silhouette lower and harder to detect. He packed snow in front of his shooting position to avoid kicking up visible snow when firing. He reportedly kept snow in his mouth to prevent his breath from forming a visible cloud in the freezing air that could reveal his position. Every detail was calculated toward a single goal: staying invisible. Over just under 100 days of fighting, Finnish records credit him with 505 confirmed kills using a rifle alone, believed to be the highest sniper kill count in the history of warfare, in any conflict, before or since. As Häyhä's kill count grew, so did his reputation. Soviet soldiers began referring to him as Belaya Smert, the White Death, a name that struck genuine fear into soldiers stationed near the Kolea front. The Soviet military reportedly dedicated significant resources specifically to eliminating him. Counter-sniper teams were sent. Artillery strikes were called in on suspected positions where he might be hiding. According to multiple historical accounts, this became a deeply personal hunt for Soviet command, not just a tactical objective. Häyhä, meanwhile, continued to operate largely alone, moving position frequently, using the terrain and weather to his advantage in ways the Soviet forces struggled to counter. His skill wasn't limited to a rifle alone. Historical accounts credit him with additional kills, using a Suomi submachine gun during close engagements, when Soviet troops managed to close the distance during assaults on Finnish positions. By early March 1940, after months of near-constant combat in brutal winter conditions, Häyhä's luck finally ran out. On March 6, 1940, during continued fighting near Kolea, Häyhä was struck in the face by an explosive bullet fired by a Soviet soldier, a devastating wound that shattered his jaw and severely disfigured the left side of his face. He was found by fellow soldiers, unconscious and severely wounded and evacuated for medical treatment. Many who saw the wound assumed it was fatal. Remarkably, Häyhä survived. He remained in a coma for several days, and by the time he regained consciousness, the Winter War had already ended. Finland and the Soviet Union signed a peace treaty on March 13, 1940, just 1 week after he was wounded. He required extensive reconstructive surgery and spent years recovering. The wound left permanent visible scarring for the rest of his life. Unlike many war heroes who embraced public attention, Häyhä lived the remainder of his life quietly, largely avoiding publicity. He returned to farming, raised hunting dogs, and reportedly rarely spoke about his wartime record, even as his legend grew internationally. When later asked in one of his rare interviews how he became such an effective marksman, his famously understated answer was simply practice. He died in April 2002 at the age of 96, having lived more than 6 decades after the war that made him a legend he himself apparently never sought. Simo Häyhä never called himself a hero. He was, by every account, an intensely private man who returned to an ordinary life of farming after the war ended, carrying scars, both visible and otherwise, from 3 brutal months in the snow. But his record remains unmatched in modern military history. A quiet farmer who became the deadliest sniper the world has ever documented, armed with nothing more than skill, patience, and an intimate understanding of the frozen forest he called home. If you found this story as remarkable as we did, subscribe. Next time, we're covering the incredible true story of a single tank crew that held off an entire advancing column alone.